Hi there, and welcome to another one of my classic reviews where I pick one of my favourite movies, give it a rewatch, and then come review it. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about the life and death of Colonel Blimp. So The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is a film from 1943, and it's one of the best British films ever made. It's made by Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger, who are responsible for a whole bunch of the best ever British movies. So this film is really, really interesting, and I think it's one of those films that really expands your viewpoint on the world if you watch it, because films are more than just stories, they're more than just art. Sometimes films can be a lesson in history, or a showcase of values, or a showcase of what people thought at a certain time. And The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, being made in the middle of World War II in Britain, is really valuable as showing us what people in Britain thought at that point in time. It's a film which is explicitly about World War II, and I think it's also about British culture. And I think it's really one of those films that tells you a lot about what people thought at the time and what it meant to people. So the premise here is actually kind of not reflected in the title, because the main character is not a colonel, he's not called Blimp, we don't see his entire life and he doesn't die. But what he is the general called General Candy. And what we do is we follow his life through three wars: the Boer War, the First World War, and then the Second World War. And Colonel Blimp, for historical context, is a character who was used for satirical points to show the old views of the British Army and how they weren't applicable to World War II. And really that's what this film is about. It's about how the British psyche and the British Army and the British officers were so out of touch with what was needed for World War II. So what we see throughout the film is the same character go through three wars. And what we notice is that he's really out of touch. The viewpoint going into World War II, he has the same viewpoint as he did in World War I and in the Boer War. And those were different wars. In the Boer War and World War I, it was British elite. It was people at the top going, oh, we know what we're doing, posh aristocrats. People who were out of touch, and they were all about being sporting and being polite and having manners, and they were all about this. And World War II was not that, because you can't find honour in an enemy like Hitler. You can find honour in anybody if you try, and when it was wars between elites, when it was World War I, and it's the British rich versus the German rich, and all the poor people of the soldiers fighting it out, well, the British rich could still find ways to respect the German rich, because manners, they're all polite to each other, they're all nice. And we see this in certain scenes. We see it in the post-World War I scenes especially, where it's emphasised that, oh, the British people are like, oh, Germany, they'll be fine, because, you know, we like the Germans. But literally, you just fought a World War over this. But what was interesting was that the British people in World War II realised, no, that hasn't worked for us. Having a upper class, a powerful elite who only care about manners and being polite and being sporting has only led to war after war after war. And now we're facing an enemy who won't be sporting. Now we're facing the Nazis who will be rough and be ruthless. And if we don't play dirty against them, we will never win against the Nazis. And this is a film not to say these elderly people who led us into all these wars. It's not to say those people are terrible people. It's to say those people need to sit aside. If we let our country be like this, we will lose this war. And it's fascinating because at the point this film was made, the British people didn't know they'd win World War II. People who watched this film at the time would have thought, oh, we might genuinely lose. We might not win. Maybe Hitler will take over. And so it's a fight to the death. It's a real fight we have to take on the Germans. And we have to be dirty. In fact, if you know here that Winston Churchill himself tried to interfere and get this movie cancelled, because he would have seen it as an attack on himself. Was Churchill himself being someone who was involved in the Boer War and the First World War? And, you know, for this film to boldly say, no, the British Army messed up in the two previous wars, and now we're into another one, and we got the same useless people at the top, is kind of scathing. But the film isn't a scathing attack on the British establishment. As much as perhaps I might like it to be, it isn't quite that. It's also quite a loving and affectionate look at those people. What's really crucial here is that it isn't just this scathing historical document ripping to shreds the past. It's a film that really looks at the main character with a lot of leniency. He's a character who's been loving and charming, and despite the fact that he's so out of touch, and the fact that he is someone who is really, when you think about it, involved in a lot of wars that kill a lot of people, and really doesn't seem to have much sympathy for anyone, he's really, really likeable. And he's someone who is so sporting, he's so generous, he's so kind, that you kind of forget all that. And I think it's a loving attack on this. It's to say, look, these people, they aren't bad, but they need to step aside. And the arc of the movie is not that the lead character learns to change, it's that he learns to accept that his viewpoint is out of date. It's to learn that reactionary politics does not work. And I think that's a really important thing, because this was a time of social upheaval in Britain. The 1940s radically changed the UK. Post the war is the foundation of things like the NHS, which has since then helped the British people tremendously. Was the war worth it? Probably not. But people were changing, and it's important to note that that's what this film is. It's the point where people changed. So first of all, the film's really loving towards the main character, but what we also see is that it's a film about friendship. The main character has a friendship with a German sort of equivalent, and throughout the film they form a friendship, and I think we really see the way that British started letting them down when we see how Britain in the 1920s becomes pacifist, it doesn't help Germany, and there's a really poignant moment where the German character emigrates to Britain and talks about how his children have become Nazis and how heartbreaking it is to watch his own children become Nazis. And I think it really highlights the failure of Britain to keep Germany stable. And I think it really highlights how years of the elites not giving a crap led to the Nazis in that way. And I think this is one of those films that really has a sense of friendship at its core. It's about these two friends who are separated by being from opposing countries, from being on different sides, and about the way that over years their friendship remains intact and the lead character never loses faith. There's also a recurring character, a recurring young woman who appears in 3 different forms throughout the film, and I think that's also interesting to show how the main character always sort of dreams of this one woman that he loves and he never forgets the face, and the fact that he's so stuck in his ways that the same person repeats and repeats and repeats throughout history, and it's always the same to him. And it's so wonderfully weird. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is a really endearing film. It's one of those films that is just really endearing. It's one of those films that you just get into and you really, really like the characters. Yeah, I really love the way it is. It's one of those films that's also just so quintessentially British. People have called this the most English movie that exists because it is so fucking English in every single way. It's that real stereotypical pompous upper class type of Britishness, and this is just it personified. The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp is a really, really British film. It's really important and it's really, really significant for its time, and it just has this very British sensibility all the way through. It's also got some stunning cinematography, which, you know, Powell and Pressburger did some very good colour cinema, especially to say this was the early era of colour cinema. They were some of the best in the world at this. There's also just a wonderful sense of time and place, a lot of cultural references, a lot of subtle moments. You really get a sense of history throughout the film, and I think overall there's no way that this isn't a masterpiece. This is one of those films that really defines an era. It's one of those films that really is a key point in history told through cinema, and I think if you want to expand your view on cinema, you watch films like this. You watch films with history, you watch films with context, and you understand just how great cinema can be when it shows us an image of what the world was. There's not many films about World War II that are as direct as this and came from within World War II. This is so fantastic. It's one of those films that I absolutely adore. I love the characters, I love the friendship, I love the love story, I love all of the little things, I love the fact there's history to it, I love the fact there's genuine weight to it, because this is a plea to fight the Nazis, and that is so historically significant as a film. I'm not saying this film had an impact, I'm not saying this film was a film that tons of people watched it, changed their minds on the world. I don't think this film had any impact at the time, but it was mostly forgotten about until years after World War II. But what I think it shows is the viewpoint of a lot of British people from World War II. And this is backed up, incidentally, if you look at other historical stuff in the World War II, you will find stuff that backs up this viewpoint. In fact, the fact that the title itself is a cultural reference to something else which agrees with the film, Colonel Blimp. So this is an absolute masterpiece. Seek it out, it's fantastic. One of the best pieces of British cinema ever made. And Life and Death of Colonel Blimp, classic, 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 classic. So have you seen The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp? If so, let me know. I'd love to hear what you think about it in the comments. Leave me a like if you like my review, and you can subscribe if you want to watch more reviews. If you want to read out what I'm watching, you can follow me on Letterboxd or on Twitter. Links in the description. And thank you for watching.